What's up, folks? Welcome to the last call number 10. I was just checking if my shirt was inside out. It's hard to tell with tie dye, what's front and back. Um, anyways, yeah, so today, yeah, um, as I mentioned, I would like to talk about safe words and building a scene and negotiating. Yeah, let's start with negotiating. Or let's start with the scene. So, a scene is just a word. That's a word the BDSM community uses to describe a container where you are um, connecting with another person. It doesn't even have to be sexually. It could be sexually, but like it could be like again for some people like being spanked or being tied up or something isn't sexual. It fulfills another part of their character and consciousness and psyche. So it doesn't have to be sexual. But that's the word the BDSM community uses is scene. Um, so yeah, I want to talk about building a scene with just very basically building a scene with the person. So first thing you do, this could be with a partner, but it could also be with a friend. It could be with a new person that you pick up play that you meet somewhere. But if you want to get into well, and honestly, in my opinion, so it is fun to have like if you meet someone and you have a spontaneous sexual interaction, that can be fun. There's a lot of excitement in that, just like the unpredictability of the buildup. And without explicit communication, there's a greater likelihood that things could go wrong or a boundary could get crossed. So like generally, I don't like really play or sexually engage with people one off very often, if ever at all. But on the whole, like I really appreciate negotiating beforehand, of just getting a sense of like here's like the very basic way to do it is like just talking with the person, just like acknowledging that there's a sexual attraction between you, talking about what you both want, what are the desires both of you have, and talking about what your boundaries are. What are you not willing to do? I mean, it's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. Like I could meet someone say like, and I know that like this might sound alien to like a lot of people. I think when they hear this are like, what? If I'm gonna sexually engage with a person, it seems so clinical to like talk about it beforehand and to like make a container or like a setting to do it in. Um, maybe, um, maybe I don't know, but in my experience, like building a container for an experience to happen, and the experience that happens in there is just as beautiful as any other experience, often more intense because it has like the bounds to exist within. But even if you don't go into like formal negotiation, I always think it's really useful to talk about boundaries, like especially if you're doing anything more less customary, um, like desires and boundaries are really useful. Like maybe a desire is like, hey, I want to pull your hair. People might not be used to that. That might catch someone off guard. Or I want to put my hand on your neck. And you can talk about that beforehand. You can talk about it in the moment too. If you're like making out with someone and you're just like ask, hey, can I put my hand on your neck? And maybe they'll say yes, and maybe they won't. The advantage of talking about it beforehand is in the moment consent's a little blurrier because you're not like in a grounded space where you can like pause, check in, see where you're at, right in the moment. You know, there's all kinds. You're not entirely sober, so to speak. So I think that like if anybody's sexually engaging, especially with someone for the first time, if you, if you're afraid at all of having a consent violation, the best thing you can do is talk with the person and acknowledge or just ask what their boundaries are and ask what their desires are. And that doesn't even mean you have to get into it, but just knowing that what a person's boundaries, but just knowing what a person's boundaries and desires are, you know the terrain that you can tread in, and they know yours. Uh, you have a shared terrain that you can explore together, and I think that's useful. I think that's really useful, especially because like a boundary, everyone's boundaries are very different, like really different, and it might catch people off guard. But I don't know. In my opinion, it's always better to over communicate. Like when in doubt, over communicate. When in doubt, over communicate. So, anyways, negotiation. Yeah, very simple. Boundaries, desires, and if you want to build a scene, well, again, I guess I'm okay. I'll just say there's two ways to go about this. Like, um, people's boundaries and desires also change day by day. You can't assume that they're going to be the same. Um, like I will talk about desires with my partner, and at this point I just trust her to voice her boundaries. But with new people, I just don't know their relationship with their boundaries, and I don't know if they can voice it in the moment. That's why I like talking about it beforehand. But again, like, uh, yeah, I guess I'm having a memory of. Well, I actually won't go into that. I guess the thing I'm thinking is, if you're the reason I wanted to talk about scenes and maybe this, because I talked about BDSM a couple days ago and it's come up in a couple different ways. But if you want to play with someone in a more intense fashion, then I think it's pretty important to. Then I think it's really important to negotiate, and then I think it's important to build a scene. So building a scene, it can look a million different ways, but really it's just like, okay, we've talked about what we want. We know that I want to be tied up, and we know that I want to be spanked, and we know that you want me to give you a hand job or something. And we know that boundaries, neither of us want to have intercourse. And, otherwise it's fair game. Okay, now we have space to play with the scene. We can say, we can put a time on it or not. We can say, all right, let's play for the next 30 minutes and see what happens. We can say, let's just open this up and see what happens. And then if you just open it up and see what happens, you can be spontaneous given the constraints you have. If you want, you can plan it out. Like I told you, that one lady I played with, who was female dominant, she like planned out a whole script that we went through, and that's an approach too. But anyway, so if you want to get into something more intense with your partner and you haven't done it before, I would recommend doing the negotiation, planning a scene out, and at least like having at least knowing the boundaries and desires. And if you want to plan a structure to it, you can. Like the first scene I did with my partner, we talked about it beforehand, and the scene was, I was a teacher, she was a student. I invited her into like class, and it kind of goes back to we had a teacher-student dynamic online for a while, where I was giving her like sexual assignments, and then I had to punish her because she didn't do one of them. And so this was the first scene we did real life. I was the teacher, she came in, I looked her in the eyes, and like we got really into a role. And then I just punished her, I spanked her, we talked in role for a little bit. It was like a 10-minute scene, and then I sent her off, and then that was that. And it was pretty hot. And I knew what we both wanted, and I knew what our boundaries were in our relationship. And I was going in planning, because I was running the scene, I was going in like knowing I wanted to spank her. That's all I really knew. I knew that was going to be the gist of the scene, but the rest of it I just improv'd. So anyways, that to say, if you want to build a scene with a partner, it can be nice to have like somewhat of a skeleton, or you can have a really fleshed out skeleton, no pun intended, or you can just improv based on the boundaries and desires. And if you have an intense scene, even if it's not intense, if you have any kind of scene with a person where there's like power or role playing or like great intensity involved, you should always do some kind of aftercare afterwards. And aftercare is, it's different for everyone, but it's essentially just like returning into a space of love. Just like, for me, it's usually like cuddling. If I have an intense experience with my partner, if I'm doming her really aggressively or vice versa, it's always nice to cuddle afterwards. Cuddle, feel each other's hearts, and just be like, yes, we love each other. We're just and like kind of like shedding the role. Because a lot of, when you go into intense experiences, a lot of emotions can come up, and it's nice to just be held afterwards. So, building a scene, and again, when I'm talking about a scene, I'm more talking about like things that might be more intense than just like, I don't know, more intense than like kissing or massage or intercourse. And I know intercourse can be intense, but things that are playing with bondage, power dynamics, or pain. Negotiate, boundaries, desires. Have a scene. You can plan it as much as you want or as little as you want, and then have aftercare afterwards. And again, like, you can still use that format even if it's not a BDSM scene. Right. There's no reason not to. And yeah, I guess like I generally have the approach of like, I do love spontaneity and I love intentionality also. And I think they complement each other really well. And I think people often shy away from making anything sexual too intentional. And I think that's foolish, in my opinion. I think that's foolish. I think it's a lost opportunity because the more you set up intentional containers and scenes to open up sexuality with your partner or another person, first of all, again, that experience can be great and intense in and of itself in a different kind of experience, but it will also impact and support the spontaneous sexual connection you have as well. So safe words. Safe words that's another term from the BDSM world, but I think it's useful whether or not you're playing with kink, with BDSM. So a safe word, essentially what a safe word is like if you're in a scene or you're interacting with your partner, you can like really be in another world with them, and you can totally feel like you're out there in another world. A safe word is a thing that anchors you to like the normal world of your connecting, and it's the thing that like it's like I'll put it that way. It's the thing that anchors you. So a lot of systems for safe words, but I think in my opinion this is the system I like. 3 words: green, yellow, red. Green, if I say green, it means good. It means I'm liking it. It means we're on the right track. Keep doing what we're doing. Green can be useful because let's say my partner has me tied up and it's like I have a blindfolded and she's like scratching me and it's like really intense. She might not totally know, and maybe I'm like crying and I'm just getting really into it, and maybe I'm loving it. I'm loving the catharsis, but she might not know. She's like, oh shit, is he actually okay? And then I can say green. I can say I'm green, or she can say like, are you green? And I can say I'm green. So it's just like this little code word to make sure you're both still enjoying it and still on the same page. And that can be useful too. Of like, one time I was at a workshop and my friend was flogging me with that, like, with not this exact flogger, but something like it. And she was really tentative. She wasn't hitting me that hard, and I wanted to just convey like, no, this feels great. You can go. And I just was saying green, and that like really helped her like understand like, oh, okay, I can really like let go more into delivering this beating. Yellow. Yellow is a safe word that means it doesn't mean stop, but it means we need to make an adjustment. We need to pause or make an adjustment. Like, something needs to shift or stop. Or not the scene has to stop, but something that we're doing has to like pause. And then I'll talk about that more. And then red means, okay, we need to stop the scene entirely. Like, we need to like completely get out of character and exit the scene. So green is like keep going, yellow's make an adjustment, and red is stop the scene entirely. I think it's good to have all 3 because red is super useful. Like if you get triggered or it's just too much, or you need to just feel like you need to get out, like it's really useful to have a word for that. And yellow is really useful because sometimes like maybe like my partner's like pinching my nipple really hard or something, and maybe I don't want to stop the scene entirely. Like I like what's happening, but it's just too hard. I could just say like yellow, and then she might pick up, okay, I'm going too hard, or I can say like yellow, go softer or something. And again, the reason why these words are useful, I have a good anecdote why. Because often when you're playing with any kind of power, you're in a different world, and like even consent gets blurry in the game because it can be like, again, like I've mentioned, like I know a lot of people have rape fantasies of both being raped and raping. Like that is, for whatever reason, it's just a thing. It's a thing that people are attracted to, or fantasies about being violated. And I have fantasies about being violated. And in my fantasies about being violated or overpowered, like in that fantasy, if I say no, stop, I don't actually want them to stop. Like, I want to be overpowered, right? And so safe words are really great because you can like really act out the fullness of your desire, and still have something that means no, like red means stop, and it's just an immutable. I think that's the right usage of that word. I'm gonna use it anyways. But immutable. I feel like I always do that. I'm always using words that like that sound right, but what does immutable mean? Whatever. Red is red is an immutable stop. So that means you can be in a scene and I'm playing with my partner and she's like, smacking me around. I'm like, no, stop. But like we both know I want more, and so she keeps doing it. No, stop. And then maybe like she hits me too hard or something, and I say, ooh, yellow, right? So these words like green, yellow, red, like no matter how deep in the scene you are, no matter deep in like playing with your partner are, no matter deep in the physicality or their energy or the character you are, green, yellow, red always cuts through that. So a reason why it's important, I had a previous partner and I was young, like I was younger. I didn't know what I was doing. We were both inexperienced in the realm of like playing with anything more edgy, and we were also both high at the time. We smoked some pot, and our relation, it was, there was a lot of factors that were making this messy. Anyways, we're making out, we're kissing on the bed, and I start to choke her. That's something I like. I like being choked, and I like choking. There's something about it that feels, I like the power in it and the sensation. Anyways, I start to choke her, and she tries to push me off. She's like, no, 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 stop. And I thought it was part of the scene at that time. Like, I thought that like she was playing along, and it was just that split second of me like thinking she was playing along, and then I waited 1 second, and then I realized, and then I stopped. But in that 1 second, let me tell you, man, so much wounding got open for both of us because we didn't have a safe word. If she had said yellow or red there, I would have stopped immediately. But because she was like saying, no, no, stop. I mean, she was actually saying, no, no, stop. But like, I didn't interpret it that way at first. I interpreted it as part of the play. And then there's this 1 second where I was choking her where she didn't want me to. Opened up this whole host of childhood wounds for her. Opened up like this whole world of insecurity for me. Holy shit, I feel like a fucking monster. She was like viewing me as a monster. Oh my god, it was terrible. I got afraid of using any kind of aggression in sex for the following like 3 years. It traumatized the fucking shit out of me. And that's why I'm saying safe words are important. I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know what they were or how to use them back then. But now, you better fucking bet your ass that if I'm getting into a scene, like my partner and I always have safe words on the table. We know what they are. If I'm getting into a scene with a new person, I will absolutely have safe words, 100%. Even like, yeah, anything like remotely edgy, remotely intense, remotely physical, whether it's sexual or not, safe words, safe words, safe words, safe words, safe words. Yeah. Oh, okay, I'll give you one activity for. I have two activities. Both of these I learned from the Light Dark Institute. Those are two teachers named Tanya and Leslie who, they teach. Theirs is more like opening up your own relationship with your own darkness and your own power for the sake of your own personal growth. That's kind of their bend. But they have a game which is really useful, and it's to practice saying yellow, because you don't want to be afraid to say yellow or red. Like, you want to just be able to say it whenever you want to, right? You don't, in the moment, you don't want any boundary from the desire to say yellow and saying yellow. And that's my experience too with, I'll say, violating my own boundaries. So even, for example, if I'm cuddling with someone, remember this happened to me a couple months ago. I was cuddling with a person and she was asleep, and she was like on my arm, and I was like, I want to move, and I didn't, and I waited like 3 minutes to move. Those 3 minutes, the recognition that I wanted to make a change, and then the time elapsing before I made that change is very painful. I'm sure we've all been in that space, but where you're violating your own boundary. And so ideally, immediately when you have a boundary, you state it. Immediately when you feel a yellow, you state it. There's no gap between the understanding that something needs to change what's happening, and that there's a boundary, and the statement or action of doing so. And I love cuddling as an example because, like, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where, like, we're cuddling with someone and they're, like, sleeping on our arm and our arm's asleep and we want to shift, but they're sleeping and we don't want to wake them up. And I find, like, when I'm in perfect relationship with my boundaries, I feel that. I don't like it. My partner's asleep. Doesn't matter. I need to move. I gracefully move out instead of just, like, waiting there torturedly forever. So a game from the Light Dark Institute. Two people. Person A... But whatever, person A, sure. Person A, pick something that's like a little painful. So like, let's say it's just like, have the other person dig their nails into your arm, and person B is digging their nails into person A's arm. And the idea is you're digging your nails into their arm, and they're saying green, green, green. And as soon as it becomes uncomfortable, yellow. Okay, and you can do it with hair. Like, pull your hair, have them pull your hair. It's green, green, green. Oh, yellow. And the idea is like, you're manufacturing an intense experience that just gradually builds up. And then when it hits yellow, you say yellow. So it's just giving you a space to practice saying yellow. And knowing what your yellow feels like, too. Knowing, like, the very distinct, but the very subtle distinction between this maybe is painful and feels good, or just like generally I'm enjoying this, and like, oh wait, I'm not enjoying this. That can be, it's a journey to discover that. So that's a really valuable game to play, where yeah, one person is just slowly and gently bringing the other person into yellow in some physical interaction. And I'll state one last thing. This is a game I also got from Light Dark Institute, Tawny and Leslie. Tawny, I think her last name is pronounced Thole, and Leslie Rogers. This is called the Yes No game. If you want to start to open up power dynamics in your relationship, this game's a good one. So all it is if we're playing together, let's put on a 10-minute timer, and I'm just gonna tell or command you to do something, and so I'll say, sit on the ground, and you will feel into it, and you'll feel what feels more pleasurable, to say yes and do it, or to say no. You could say no, or you could say yes, and then if you say yes, you sit on the ground, and then I'll say scratch your head, and then again you feel into it, no. So it's a very simple game. The reason it's interesting is because you can play it in many different ways with many different intentions, like pushing yourself to say no when you normally say yes, pushing yourself to say yes when you normally say no. But one way of playing it that's really gratifying is both people are looking for the most pleasurable experience possible. Sometimes it's pleasurable to say no. Sometimes it's very pleasurable to say yes. So here's what I love about the game. If I'm telling you what to do, and I say, would you please sit on the ground? You feel into it, you say no. Then maybe I try the same command again, but I try saying it in a different way. And I say, sit on the fucking ground. And maybe you receiving that, it's like, oh, that turned me on, yes. Or maybe again you say no. And then if you say no, then I'll try something else. Oh, would you please sit on the ground for me? And again, maybe you say yes, maybe you say no. And if you say no, maybe I'll try something else, and I'll say, make me really happy. You want to make me happy, don't you? Would you just sit on the ground for me? Right? Okay, so you get the point, and then maybe that one, they say, oh, yes. You get to, try on all of these different, just, subtle, energetic power dynamics, and then you can find different channels that just feel pleasurable to say yes to. And I was playing this game with my friend, the same one who was flogging me when I was like, green, green. And we found this really surprising dynamic where she would take on this role of it felt like a bratty daughter, my bratty daughter, or a bratty princess, and it just felt, I couldn't say no. It felt so good to say yes to requests from that place. I don't know why, but it just did. It just did. And it was a great discovery, and then we played with that a little bit in our connection. So that's a really fun game if you want to start to introduce power dynamics in just a subtle and playful way in your relationship. Cool. Yeah, that's all I got. I'll close out here today. If you've made it this far in the journey, thank you. Thank you. This has been a true pleasure for me to talk about this stuff. It's been, it just feels like I've been accumulating and cultivating knowledge and experience and building wisdom in this department, and to be able to just in one fellow swoop, just let it all out is feeling really good. Excuse me. Right now I say let it all out, I just burped. But it's feeling really good, and this feels like an important step in my own journey of creating. So thanks for joining me, and let me know if anything in here was useful, what stuck out to you and worked, or maybe what wasn't useful too, any kind of feedback. Alright, I will see you in the future, I hope. I gotta do one last spin to close it off. It's my signature exit.